Hope I am audible to all of you. Am I clear? So shall we begin? Friends, my name is Vijoo Krishnan. Presently, I am Joint Secretary of the All India Kisan Sabha. I am here today to speak to you about the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the peasantry and the rural poor. We have all been seeing the situation, the unprecedented situation across the globe, and India also has been hit by this pandemic. And surely, over the last few days, it has become very clear that the most oppressed, the poor, the peasantry, the toiling masses are surely the worst hit. And it has come all the more very clearly into the limelight with the condition of the migrant workers in Delhi who have been in thousands being forced to flee from the capital city to their own homelands. So that is a situation which has happened. So naturally there is a question as to what should have been done. And here, while the approach of the government itself has been to look at this entire COVID-19 pandemic as a health issue alone, a health epidemic alone. It's not just a health crisis. It also is a social and economic crisis. That is something which had to be understood. And before the lockdown was imposed on the country, there should have been it should have been preceded by steps which would have assured the people of the country that they would be taken care of, their food requirements would be taken care of, and also they would not face any problem if they are actually affected by the disease itself. There has been no such effort by this government, the BJP government, before actually going into the lockdown. One was expecting that with the closure on 22nd March, there was some preparations for going ahead with the lockdown. Unfortunately, that was not how it has happened. It is only later that the government has come up with some piecemeal measures to try and address the crisis. But the crisis of a humongous nature, which is staring at us today, is something which should have been taken care of in a much more meticulous manner. So we are finding there are certain questions. The lockdown is surely going to affect the economy, but it has already affected the poor. And that is something which we are seeing it unfold in different parts of the country. A government should have first reassured its people, that the people of our country, that they would be taken care of come what may. Unfortunately, that has not happened. That is led to a situation wherein there is panic, and that has led to a situation where people are forced to flee from their places of work to different parts of from where they come from. That is a situation which could have been totally avoided if there was a proper plan. There is also a question that is uh, regarding the issue of how this has affected the peasantry, how it is likely to affect the peasantry. Very clearly, this is a time when in large parts of India, there is the standing crops are there. Already it has been affected in some areas by the unseasonal rains, and in Haryana, Punjab, and many parts of North India, the wheat crop is nearing harvest. You are having also chili and chana, different pulses. Depending on which region you are from, there are different crops that are ready for harvest. In such a circumstance, with the lockdown coming in, and total without any preparedness to address this issue of harvesting, and also once you harvest, whether it is storage or transportation and marketing, this has come to a standstill. Naturally, this has led to a panic among the peasantry. And since this entire issue, we have raised, the All India Kisan Sabha as well as other organizations of the peasantry have raised this question with the government. The Kerala government came up with a announcement that the harvest of paddy in this season would be treated as an essential service, and the government would come up with all support for the peasantry to ensure that their standing crops are not destroyed. In large parts of India, what is happening is, due to this uncertainty, there is also the threat of the stray cattle menace, the wild animals, and the unseasonal rains, which could lead to a destruction of the standing crops. So that is an issue which has to be immediately addressed by the government. It is worth noting that due to the continuous pressure by organizations of the peasantry, the government has come with a notification that there would be that these harvest operations and marketing and such things, the restrictions would be removed from. However, with the transportation facilities also coming to a standstill, that is a major issue. You don't take your harvested wheat and paddy in hand carts or in gunny bags on your backs. You're going to require trucks, especially in areas which are having large scale production of paddy or wheat or other crops. So that is something which has come to a standstill. These these issues have to be addressed by maintaining the health protocol and there has to be an education and effort from the government to ensure that the COVID-19, the coronavirus, does not spread to the community at large. There is also an issue which is coming up regarding the issue of the tribal farmers. As far as the Adivasis are concerned, or the other traditional forest dwellers and forest workers, almost collection of the minor forest produce, um, and also produce like mahua, etc., tendu leaves, and so on. That has had come to a standstill. There is the issue of collection as well as the issue of marketing. These are issues that need to be addressed in the tribal areas, and in the tribal areas there is also the additional issue of the food security. Regarding the food security also, what has been announced by the government is very too little, I would say, because while food grains is mentioned in it, the pulses that has been announced is only about a kg per family. This is just not adequate at all. The nutritional needs of the people, the rural poor, the peasantry, the Adivasis, the most oppressed sections, the toiling masses, is something which has to be kept in mind by the government. Unfortunately, much more needs to be done in that direction. There would also be the requirement to open community kitchens and to provide cooked food, especially under the midday meal scheme and so on, to the children who come from these families. That is something, there has been not much effort in this direction. There is a model within India. The Kerala has been providing midday meals, the meals, midday meal, under the midday meal scheme at the residences of the children, and even the community kitchens are ensuring that food is provided for the needy people wherever it is required. That is maintaining the different the health protocol which is required at this time. Unfortunately, no such steps has been taken. A vast army of volunteers is required to implement these kind of measures. Unfortunately, it cannot just be left to the government personnel alone. You require much more people to join in this effort. A community support system is required. That is very important for ensuring that we can fight this pandemic that is a looming threat on our country and the globe at large. There is also the question of how whether in the harvesting season, whether this lockdown is going to further lead to a deterioration of the rural areas. I would say that we have seen a disaster of the demonetization. It was also created by this the government's decision itself. We have seen how that has led to extreme distress of the peasantry, the rural poor, the rural artisans, and so on. This present situation is much, much more serious. That is something which we have to understand. It is not like the not just like the demonetization alone. Here you are totally shutting down the whole thing, the entire economy. It pushes the a large population into a sense of insecurity where their livelihood is threatened, their food security is threatened, the health facilities are lacking, and so on. That is something which really needs to be addressed by this government. The issue we have been raising as organization of the peasantry for long has been freedom from indebtedness. One issue we have raised is the issue of remunerative prices, which should be at least 50% above the cost of production, all paid out costs, including the rent on the land, a 50% more than that, and with assured procurement. That is something which is not happening. Today, with the procurement facilities, it has to be expanded. There has to be mobile procuring units. The government should take a proactive stand to procure as well as store the produce of the farmers and ensure that cost plus 50% is assured to these farmers. That unfortunately is not happening. In such a circumstance, you are already having a situation when the farmers are in an acute agrarian crisis, and indebtedness has been a major issue which has led to farm suicides in our country. We have been demanding freedom from indebtedness. today, more than any time before, it is required that the government comes with a moratorium on all farm loans and loans of the rural poor. That is something which has to be done immediately, and such a move would provide a confidence. It builds confidence among the people. That is something the government has to do. We have there is the issue of the migrant laborers, which is in which first came out in Delhi. The role of the government or different political parties as well as organizations is to reassure the migrant workers and the people around that this is a pandemic that we have to fight together, and all of us are in it together. There is a need for a sense of social solidarity that is required. Unfortunately, what we find that the government seems to have taken, at least the central government and certain other state governments, seems to have taken the issue of social distancing, so-called social, whereas it actually should have been physical distancing. That also should be facilitated by the government trying to have safe houses where people could be kept safely at safe distance. Unfortunately, that infrastructure is not there. Probably we'll have to learn from this pandemic and the experience of this pandemic and come up with such places where they could be kept at safe distances. That is required. But it's a country with a huge population. It's not an easy job. That surely it requires a much greater investment by the government, by the private and different corporate companies, which have been benefiting in huge concessions and so on over the years. So they have to play a much bigger role. Unfortunately, nothing has come from worth. It has come from them. There has been some corporate companies coming up with support. Much greater needs to be done. Regarding the migrant workers, we have the example of Kerala again here. It is necessary to speak about the Kerala way of handling this issue, because more than 4,600 labor camps have been ready to handle with this situation. Wherever there is a shortage of food grains or prepared food, community kitchens have come up. They are being delivered food. They are being, if those they want to cook on their own, they are being provided with the provisions for that. That is something where you have a large section. In fact, the Kerala has called for 236,000 volunteers to help in this entire process. That is something which they are trying to put in place there. And this kind of an approach, that it is not migrant workers, they are the guest workers. So they are the guest workers. They are helping in building a state, any state. It is the these guest workers who are putting in their toil to make it what it is. So they have to be treated with dignity, and that is something which every state has to follow. And Kerala has issued notices in different languages so that they can communicate to the guest workers that they would be protected at any cost. They would not be allowed to go hungry when during this lockdown period. That is something worth emulating. We have the issue of whether what is the situation in the rural areas, especially in the rural areas, whether the lockdown itself, whether there is a possibility of isolating the people who are affected, whether a distance could be maintained and so on. In India, still the issue of housing is not actually dismal. If you see the condition of the housing, the large number of people are still homeless, or they don't have proper living conditions. That is a deterrent to this kind. So when you are talking about addressing these kind of crises in future, we will surely have to look into a situation wherein public housing for the homeless is something which will have to be thought of. These would come later in the narrative, but surely we must bring these into the narrative. There is also the issue of whether the rural health care infrastructure will actually is enough to cope with the public health scenario now. It is states like Kerala have had an impeccable health system in place, and that is not the case in all states of our country. That is a situation which is a challenging situation that we are facing. We are seeing how among the lowest number of testing is happening in India. That itself, it was about 6.8 tests per million just a few days back, and it has slowly been rising to 10.5, and as of March 27th, it is only 20 tests per million population. And here also, there are reports coming that about 35% of all tests have been done in Kerala alone, which is only about 3% of the population of our country. In states which the ruling party have been in a big way creating a hype about the Gujarat model, apparently not even 2 per million are being checked. The situation in certain other states is even worse, and this is something which also needs to be addressed by the government. And surely there are examples where you have Spain, which apparently has gone in for nationalizing the healthcare facilities. That is something which we'll also have to bring into the narrative and try to work in that direction. It is not enough to show support to the health workers with clanging of utensils or plates, beating plates, or clapping hands. It is also necessary that along with that, the government very strongly speaks about obscurantist practices. For instance, you have the groups like Hindu Mahasabha coming up with the Gomutra as a treatment, or cow's urine as a treatment for the COVID-19 pandemic. I think the government, starting with the Prime Minister, should first take action against these kind of elements who are coming up with such obscurantist kind of ideas and trying to spread superstitious beliefs among the people. And along with that, you need to have the health department, the healthcare workers being provided with the best equipments. There are reports coming from certain states that the doctors and nurses are not having the proper protective gear even. That is a situation that we are facing in. And it's not that you have some kind of how nurses or doctors are suddenly being praised as angels or gods and so on. The doctors and nurses have been repeatedly making it a point. We don't need to be called these names. We are doing our duty, and what is required is that we are being given the best conditions under which we can work with the best facilities and best kind of protective gear. That is something which has to be done. Unfortunately, that has not been done. As far as the initiatives that the All India Kisan Sabha is thinking about, and we had written to the Prime Minister even before the package from the Finance Minister. We had demanded that in the first month itself, about all those below poverty, about 70 to 80 crore population of our country, should be given 5,000 rupees for the first month, and to be reviewed and later extended if required. That would lead to around an expense of around 3,50,000 crores to 4 lakh crores, which the government would have to invest. The government's package, so-called package, speaks about 1,75,000 crores being spent, but certain things like the Pradhan Mantri Kisan, the installment of 2,000 per farmer, that was something which was in any case due now. And we have demanded that the entire 6,000 should be given to the farmers. And here also, while the election, during the election time, the government was making a huge campaign that 14.5 crore farmers would benefit from the Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi. Surprisingly, in the finance minister's announcement of the package, 6 crore, almost 6 crore farmers, because she mentions 8.7 crore farmers would benefit from the Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi. Where have almost 6 crore farmers vanished? When you are having to give it back to the farmers, suddenly their numbers are shrinking. This is something which is unacceptable. All farmers, all tenant farmers, all landless cultivators should be provided with the benefit of this. As far as the NREGA, the increase of 20 rupees, it is pittance. It is nothing, because in our country, not even 40 days, on an average, not even 40 days of work is being provided. So the claim that it would if a person would benefit by 2,000 rupees is, even in case it was true, this 2,000 rupees over a year is nothing. So every family should have benefited by an initial payment of 5,000 rupees, other than the food grains, other than the provision of pulses and vegetable oils and sugar, etc. We are facing an extraordinary situation, and the steps also should be commensurate with that. That is something which is required. Today, we have a situation that what is required now is a social solidarity is what is required. And the All India Kisan Sabha and All India Agriculture Workers Union have written to the Prime Minister that to face this pandemic, you require a huge army of volunteers who would be trained. We are willing to be trained. We are willing to work as volunteers to address this, to fight out this pandemic. And that is something which the government should think of. And there is something which we have to note, that repeatedly there is this talk about social distancing. It is not social distancing. It has to be what was intended as physical distancing. And unfortunately, the way our migrant workers, the workers are being treated in different parts of our country, the way even certain people who are providing services, there are cases reported where certain resident welfare associations have come out against pilots and health workers. I think that is an extremely insensitive way of dealing with the people. And here they have taken literally the issue of social distancing, and there is a distancing of the most oppressed sections, distancing of the working class toiling masses that is going on. This has to stop forthwith. And here the nation's the leadership, the government has to come out very clearly against these. These are some views which I had about the to speak to you about the COVID-19 pandemic. And if at all there are some questions, then that could be also raised. I think I have addressed most of the issues here. And if anything more, then I would be willing to, if there are some questions which you would like to ask. I think an issue maybe I could add to that the AIK's comrades, the comrades, a cadre of the All India Agriculture Workers Union, DYFI, SFI, the CITU in different parts of India have been playing their role along with the other like-minded organizations. Even in Delhi, the CITU along with other like-minded organizations have been trying to provide relief to the uh, uh, workers who are going back to their homes. So that is something which has been going on. We are in the coming days, the Kisan Sabha and the Agriculture Workers Union, we are planning to open gruel centers and community kitchens in wherever possible for us, keeping in mind the seriousness of the situation. That kind of an intervention also we are planning in coming days. And on a daily basis, we have been getting calls from across the country about workers from their states being stranded in different parts of India. A large number of calls have been regarding workers in Kerala from Odisha, Jharkhand, um, from Bihar, Assam, and Bengal. And in each of these cases, whether in Kerala, whether in Karnataka, Maharashtra, and even Andhra, Tamil Nadu, and other states, immediately the comrades have been intervening. They have contacted these workers who are facing a sense of insecurity. There has been an effort to provide them with whatever is required, and this effort needs to be further strengthened in coming days. There is need for greater coordination of this effort. We have yesterday put out a message calling for any kind of helpline numbers or any contact numbers from each of these states, so that there could be a coordinated effort to uh, ensure that relief efforts as well as reach out relief efforts reach out to the most needed at the right time. That is something which we have to do. We request the cooperation of all of you in this direction. And I would say, in extremely difficult circumstances, people in Delhi, especially the working class, the trade unions, and different civil society groups have come out and are trying to help out the workers who are fleeing the national capital. I hope the central government and the state governments will extend support to them and ensure that there is a more sensitive effort to mitigate the suffering of the working class. Now, one issue about how we have been uh, um, doing our job in every state. We have been trying to reach out to the needy in every state, and why there is no propaganda. I think one is to spread the information so that the needy can actually benefit from it. That is something which is required. We are making our efforts. Surely, these kind of surely these kind of initiatives that the SFI and other organizations are taking, that also will help in this direction. let us not talk about just propaganda as such. I think there is need for disseminating the information to the widest possible sections so that people can benefit from the efforts we are trying to put in place. I'm sorry, I'm a little new to this. There are few questions, trying to find them out. There is a question whether the government should seek help from Cuba. I think first we must try to help ourselves. Cuba has been doing its role in the most required manner, in the most required places. And surely some kind of an expertise and whether technical know-how and so on, if that is required, surely there should be an effort in that direction. Now, how is it going to affect other services linked to agriculture? That is a question which has been asked here. Surely you see, even now, even as the government says all essential service, one can go to buy essential services. Unfortunately, what is happening is there are so many restrictions. You are not freely able to access your requirements. A big impact has been already on the poultry, the fishing section, poultry farmers, the fishing community. Milk has been hit in a big way. Dairy farmers have been hit in a big way. So that is something which, for instance, in the high-handed role in many states of the police, that is something which has been which has to be addressed immediately. See, the question of nationalizing health services. See, we have been demanding. Health has become almost inaccessible to the poor in our country. And the dismal state of testing I was mentioning, and how suddenly tests were allowed for where the private agencies could also test at charging around 4,500 rupees. Every crisis cannot be created into an opportunity to profiteer. So unfortunately, that is the role that is being done. That cannot be stopped unless you have a much greater investment of the public money, the state investment in healthcare. That is something which is required. Another issue we have been speaking about is the issue of bank nationalization also. That we have been seeing how the funds of the NABARD is being utilized to refinance some of the non-banking financial corporations and so on. That is something also, all these issues we need to bring into the narrative, and we need to build a alternative. The social solidarity that we will build now, on the basis of that, we need to build an alternative that will fight their issue of the social distancing. That is something which we, in coming days, will have to take up. No, actually, there is a question of how there is a poisonous propaganda and so on. The IT cell, you all know which IT cell I am speaking about. The government should first try and restrain its IT cell. Today, there are reports coming in that through WhatsApp, different kinds of confusion being spread amidst the migrant workers, and that is leading to a panic. There has been even in, for instance, in Kerala, a small kind of a mobilization, one of the districts has happened, which is the best state where the workers are being treated as guest workers. They are being provided food stuff and so on, and a large number of labor camps, community kitchens have come up. There also this kind of an effort is there. That is something we have to watch out against, has to be countered. There are certain groups, including the like the alt news, which has been exposing these fake news. That is something that is also part of the struggle for us. No, regarding whether this will bring into debate about the industrial farming and different issues, I think surely post COVID, the narratives are going to be different kinds of narratives are going to come. And while I already mentioned how much more investment into health by the government, that is something which is going to. So we have to bring up these issues into the narrative, and it is. And along with it, we also need to counter the narrative of people who have been claiming that by there were different, including some superstars, claiming that by banging of plates, the virus would go away. Uh, and these kind of issues also, there is the need to counter that. Then how the government is approaching the issue of the working class, how the migrant workers have been treated in different parts of the country. Surely these have to be, in fact, a wide range of issues have to be brought into the narrative, and it will surely come into narrative. I feel there would be a shift in paradigm as far as the narrative, as far as the debates are concerned, post COVID. No, I think any there's a question about how doctors and others treating this pandemic are being thrown out by the landlords. See, there have been very clearly in certain areas. I would like to believe that these are just not the general case. It is a few exceptions. And in such cases, the government should intervene, and if need be, action should be taken. There is also the case of the people of the different states of the India's northeast being facing racial slurs in different parts of India. That also has to be addressed. That is just not done. It has to be brought to the notice of the law enforcing authorities, and action must be taken on that. And I think organizations like the Student Federation of India, the Democratic Youth Federation of India, and such organizations should play a big role in creating an awareness against these kind of approaches. See, there is a question about Professor Jayati Ghosh mentioning about MSP, minimum support price, to ensure farmers don't just sit on harvested crops, and we don't have a protracted food crisis. See, the very fact that there is a buffer stock that has, due to the production of food grains by farmers reaching record high, uh, a situation, a pandemic-like situation that we are having now, can be addressed by a distribution of these food grains. That is something I think we must salute the farmers and agriculture workers of our country for this service that they have been doing. Um, it is also required that along with that, there is no procurement. You have a minimum support price announced. Let us say for paddy, you have 1830 or 1835 per quintal as the minimum support price. A large part of India, it is not even fetching 1,000 to 1,200 per quintal. So every quintal, the farmer is losing more than 600 rupees. And that is the situation. So you don't have procurement mechanism across the country. You don't have purchasing centers across the country. And only mainly most of the procurement that is happening is paddy and wheat. And to certain extent, you have pulses being procured. So that is an issue that is why we are demanding assured procurement of all crops. That is not happening, and it should be at least cost plus 50% should be the minimum support price. Otherwise, the MSP announced is only notional. It is only on paper. The farmers don't benefit it beyond a point. In Kerala for paddy, the Kerala government is procuring at 2650, paying almost more than 800 rupees more than what the central government has announced as the minimum support price. So that kind of an incentive to the farmers is required. You required to provide subsidized inputs for the next season. Given the present crisis, for the next season, free seeds have to be provided. The loans have to be waived. There should be interest-free loans should be provided. There is a need for expanding the storage facilities. Unfortunately, that is not there. Uh, Different such steps. It area specific. You have certain demands. Those have to be met with, and along with this, the issue of the expenses on health and education is something which has been rising on a regular basis. A large part of the meager earnings of the peasantry, the working class, and the toiling and the agriculture workers actually goes to meet the expenses for health, education, and also price rises a major issue. So it is the prerogative of the government to ensure that they are provided subsidized food grains, their subsidized inputs for agriculture, and their produce is also procured at a remunerative price. That is something which is required. So I think all the questions here I've tried to answer to my best ability. I hope I have satisfied friends who have asked questions. Um, I think, like I mentioned in the beginning, this is a very, the times are really testing. It is an unprecedented scenario as far as our country is concerned. We are a huge country with a huge population. A large part of it are deprived of even the basic health facilities. So the role of all of us in such a circumstance has to be actually informed by the feeling of social solidarity. We need to build whatever possible on the basis of that. And that is an approach which even the government has to follow. That is an approach, that is the only approach which can fight a disease of this magnitude. Thank you, friends.